It sound right, boys. Sound right, boy. It sound right, boy.
Fala galera, bem-vindos, bem-vindas todas a mais um Zup Open Talks. O de hoje sensacional demais, eu vou falar bem rápido aqui para ter mais tempo para conversar com ele. Sou um homem branco, estou sentado numa cadeira preta, atrás de mim tem alguns instrumentos musicais, uma luzinha azul, estou vestindo uma camisa preta, estou com meu cabelo preso, tenho uma barba um pouco mais branca do que eu gostaria que ela fosse, e estamos aqui para mais um Zup Open Talks para falar com o Orkut hoje. Quando eu falei que ia convidar o Orkut, eu tive que explicar para um monte de gente que eu não ia conversar com um site nem com uma rede social, eu ia conversar com o Orkut. Acabei de contar isso para ele no backstage, a gente deu bastante risada. Legal? Os recadinhos de sempre, galera. Quer começar a contribuir com o projeto Open Source e não sabe por onde começar? opensource.zup.com.br. Temos 4 projetos Open Source que mudam o jeito que as empresas e os desenvolvedores desenvolvem suas aplicações, ajustam seus ambientes e colocam elas em produção, trazendo muito mais agilidade no dia a dia. Então, dá uma olhada nos nossos projetos lá. E se você quer trabalhar numa empresa que realmente se preocupa com a tua evolução profissional, pessoal, com a tua evolução exponencial, porque a gente acredita que você só consegue fazer produto incrível com pessoas incríveis, vem trabalhar na Zup, todo mundo 100% remoto, trabalha de onde quiser, temos já gangues de nômades digitais na Zup, então vem trabalhar com a gente, o link está aí no comentário, a galera está postando, beleza? Sem mais demora, vou trocar para o inglês e vou chamar o meu convidado mais que especial. Welcome, Mr. Orkut, to Zup Open Talks.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for accepting. And, we are talking on the backstage over the past year and a half doing these interviews and the Zup Open Talks. Almost everyone that works with technology in Brazil and today are community leaders, are influencers that I've invited to be here. When I asked the question, how do you started working with community and why you decide to give part of your time to help other people, every single story starts with the same thing. I was in college, I was a developer or things like that. And then I discovered one social network called Orkut.com. So in name of all those guys and all other people I know in Brazil, you are the person that created the social network that taught Brazilians how to use internet. My parents passed through that. I have several friends that never touched a computer, but they need a computer to be on Orkut.com. So thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for creating this thing that changed the lives of a lot of people that I know. I know couples that they met on Orkut.com. I know friends that lost the contact and relatives that lost contact for like 10 years, 15 years. And the social network put all those people together. So thank you so much for all that, Orkut.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
And the first one that people they asked me is how to pronounce your second name. I will not try it. You tried to touch me a few minutes ago, but I will not take my risk there.
So my last name is Büyükkökten, and it has umlauts on the U and O. In the United States, they just call it Büyükkökten, which is an easier pronunciation.
Yeah, it's much more easy than the other one. Over the past years, we heard a lot of histories about why did you decide to create Orkut.com. The one that I used to tell people is that you wanted to test the 6-person network, which means that between 2 people in the world, only 6 people could connect it. Is that true, or is that just urban legends?
There are a lot of theories about why I started creating and building social networks. And actually, one of them was that I was looking to find a girlfriend online, and that's why I created Orkut. And none of those stories are true.
Okay,
like in social network, when I started Stanford as a graduate student, and having like an international background for me, I was very outgoing, friendly. I had no problem making friends. But what I noticed was most of the undergraduates met their friends during their freshman year in their dorms or fraternities. And then they had the same group of friends the rest of college, even like after college. And I was curious why students didn't venture out of the hallways of their dorm to meet people, to find other students that had similar interests and passions. And that got me interested into launching a social network called Club Nexus for Stanford. And that was back in year 2000. And that was my entry to social networking. So my goal building social networking sites was to connect people first initially in a local community like Stanford, And later on, it was the Stanford alumni network, which was called InCircle. And then the third social network I built was Orkut.com, which had over 300 million users. And now I launched Hello.com, which is live in Brazil.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk about this. I've heard that. I was surprised actually because one of your interviews, you said that you wrote the whole Orkut by yourself using .NET, C Sharp, and those technologies. So at that time, how was the biggest technical challenge you have? Basically, when the network starts growing, because I think it could be insane to scale servers this way at that time.
Technology was very different. Infrastructure was very different. All the cloud services and computing power and databases we have now, like AWS, Google Cloud, Azure, didn't exist. And the easiest way to build apps and web apps was through technologies like ASP, SQL Server. And I had a lot of experience with those technologies. So the Orkut.com was built on Windows servers using Microsoft SQL Server with the .NET platform using the C# language, which is very similar to Java. And it was a one-man project, and I was able to run the entire application on one single server, and it was able to scale all the way up to like 200,000 users, believe it or not.
Wow.
And we started growing right away really fast. And then I reached out to Microsoft at Washington. And a lot of like the services they had was not scalable, like the session for like servers or like this like the SQL database they had. And at the time, it was really hard to build scalable solutions. And it took us one entire year to rewrite Orkut.com using C++, Java, Google infrastructure, and using Google computing services.
And despite of the technical challenges, what was the biggest challenge you faced when the network starts growing?
The biggest challenge we had was definitely the scaling challenge, because we had so much demand, so many page views. And at one point, we had as many page views as a Google search. And we started giving errors. And you probably remember the very famous error message we had: bad server, no donut for you. That was like the initial issue we had. And in the past, like the first two social networks I built, Club Nexus and InCircle, were both small communities. They were niche, and it required a Stanford email or a Stanford alumni email to sign up. When we launched Orkut.com, you see all the things that you get from people who are not certified. As a result, we got some amount of like fake accounts, spam, and abuse. And we had to build tools and services to fight with those. And that's one thing that I wasn't expecting, because in the past, I always saw like the good side of people using social networks. Because when people know who you are, you have like credibility, you have a reputation, and you don't want to tarnish it. But unfortunately, online, we can be whoever we are. We can be anonymous, we can be fake, and our actions have no consequences. And that's why it's so important to include tools to fight abuse, harassment, fake users when you create a online social platform.
Yeah, I remember it was a very good place to be, totally different from other social networks I used. I'm not sure if I was only walking with the good guys or the good groups, but even when we had things that may sound like hate, it was a hell of a fun, because we Brazilians make fun with everything. So like there were groups like I hate apples, and just people that hate Apple go there, and they said that I hate wherever other thing, and it was fun. But talking about the user behavior and the toxicity that we see on networks today, How was your personal feeling when you saw that starting growing inside the network?
So on Orkut.com, we didn't have any major issues with abuse and harassment, and we never had issues with misinformation or like data privacy, because we built the entire experience to empower users, and users always came first. And if you look at the history of like Orkut.com, it was around like 10 years. We never had the consequences that social media has today. If you look at social media today, it's causing anxiety, depression, loneliness, mental health issues, and it's even causing suicides among teenagers. If you look at Orkut.com and now on Hello, we don't have like any of those, bad consequences. And if you look at what social media did to us, it's really important to understand the economics of surveillance capitalism. So there's an immense amount of user experience on these services that's converted into data. And these social networks use that data to create a human model for each person. Each person that uses a social network gives an insane amount of data by just interacting with content and other users. And using that, social media builds human models. And building these human models, they're able to figure out behavior, and they're also able to manipulate behavior. And actually, human nature has patterns that are very recognizable when it comes to behavior. For instance, if you go out to a bar district, and if there's a bar that has a huge line outside of it, you are more likely to be interested in going to that place, because it's all about like scarcity, and people like to be where they can't be. And these are like very recognizable human patterns. What happened with social media is they use these human models they generated to increase engagement. And when they increase engagement, increases profits. And that's like the number one priority for all these like social media sites. They want to be as profitable as possible. To be profitable, you need more engagement. But when you look at what creates engagement, it's content that's polarizing. It's content that's angry. It's also misinformation. So social media today doesn't care if the content is like wrong, right? If it spreads misinformation, they don't care if the content is like polarizing. It increases, like user engagement, so they're fine with it. So there's an insane amount of technology, machine learning, artificial intelligence that powers these algorithms that generate our feeds. And the whole thing is optimized for profit. They don't care about users, they don't care about mental health, they don't care about authenticity, they don't care about connecting people. And as a result, we have an epidemic of like loneliness, we have an epidemic of like mental health issues, and it's like destroying our societies, it's destroying humanity. And we started to measure the love, respect, and worth we receive from the number of like likes or followers we have online. And like right now, it's not about togetherness, it's not about friendship, it's not about love. It's just about comparing ourselves to each other, because we look at our feeds every single day, multiple times a day, and we see backdrop of content that people drop. And these content includes fancy dinner parties, selfies with celebrities, world trotting around the world, right? All these like pretty perfectly orchestrated and filtered images. And we all look at them and we see that, I can never be as beautiful or handsome, I can be never as smart, I can never be as good, I can never be as popular. And then you feel that you can never measure, and that creates anxiety and depression. And this is a huge problem especially with teenagers, because when you're at that age, when you're 13, it makes it really easy to be open to abuse, because you want to do what your friends are doing, and every teenager today is on multiple social media accounts like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and they see a very different view of the world, which is not real, and that causes them to do what everyone else is doing, which creates this triple effect, and at the end they become very miserable, lonely, unhappy, and have like mental health issues.
Yeah, and how do you address all those issues inside hello.com?
If you look at Orkut.com, we optimize the whole experience around connecting people, creating authentic experience, and also optimizing for happiness. And if you look at Hello, we have the same principles. We use the power of technology to optimize, to bring people together, and also to optimize for happiness. And there is a pattern of like human behavior, and you can influence that pattern. You can use the power of technology to bring people together, or you can use that power of technology to split them apart. And with hello.com, every technology, product, design decision we made is just to increase happiness and increase authentic connections. So it's a combination of like product, design, and technology.
Okay, and about the idea of profiling people to sell publicity and things like that, how it works on Hello?
If you look at social media today, they try to look at your feed signals, what you mention in the conversations, and they use that as a signal to figure out what you put on your feed. And what you see in your feed is also things that would increase your engagement, and oftentimes it's misinformation, it polarizes you, it's like angry content. With Hello, what we did was we took the best part of Orkut.com, the communities, and we empowered them even more. When you join Hello, you pick 5 interest passion buckets that we call personas. So when you join Hello, you can see I'm into food, traveling, science, movies, and cats, for instance. And you explicitly tell us what are like the biggest things that you're passionate about, what you like in your life. And we use that as an explicit signal from you to customize the whole experience of Hello around it. And when you look at your feed, it's very different than the feed you see on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, for instance. In other social media, what you see in your feed is just content from your friends, people you follow, and also advertisements. And that doesn't give any opportunity to meet someone outside of your network. On Hello, we use a completely different topology. When you look at your feed, you see content like from people you follow and your friends, obviously. But we also show content that's local, that's popular, that has a high reputation, and also content that fits into like the personas you have. For instance, like if you say you like video games, you're going to see content around like video games in your feed, and that's going to make it more engaging. And then you will see like people talking about like the latest, let's say like Call of Duty that came out. And that's how we provide a very organic way for people to start chatting and interacting. And that's how you make new friends. And if you look at Orkut.com, communities was one of like the best, most organic spaces where people made friends. And those friendships turned into oftentimes like being like colleagues or best friends, or even like romantic relationships where you create families and have kids. And we are seeing the exact same thing on Hello, where people are connecting authentically, genuinely, and getting together. And we already have so many amazing success stories. When I was in Brazil 2 years ago, I met this couple. The guy lived in like north of Brazil, and the girl lived on south of Brazil. And they met on a community on Hello that was about music. So they start talking about music, And at the end, they fell in love, and the guy ended up moving to south of Brazil to be together with his girlfriend. And these are the stories that I like. These are the stories that show how social media has this like tremendous magical impact on society if it's done the right way, with the right intention, with the right goal, with the correct vision.
So you don't have publicity inside Hello?
Right now, we don't have advertisements, but when we introduce advertisement, we're going to be able to target it directly to your explicit personas. For instance, if you are into like running, you would like to get advertised about like running shoes from Adidas or like Nike. If you're a huge fan of like TV shows and let's say sci-fi, if the new like season of Expanse came out on Netflix, that's something you would like to know about. So social networks actually can be profitable and monetized very easily by giving advertisements and marketing content that's relevant to the user. But that's not what's happening on social media today. Whenever I look at ads, they are not like very relevant and not tailored to what I'm really like passionate about. And on Hello, we are able to circumvent that because we already know what kind of like things you like. And we had a very similar experience on Orkut.com actually. When you went on communities, you would see content around communities that was like very relevant. For instance, there was one Portuguese community that said, I like to find coffee beans in my ice cream. And when you look at that community, if you see advertising about like ice cream, that's like completely relevant and something you're interested in. So, and we'll be able to do the same thing with Hello.
Yeah. So when are you planning to have an iOS app for Hello? Because there's a story. I created my Hello account when you launched the service. I was using an Android phone, and a few months after, I switched to iPhones, and I never had another Android device. So I'm really, really curious to go there and start interacting more on the network.
That's a wonderful question. So my background is engineering, and I built all of Orkut.com on my own, including like the design, the database. I even went to the data centers to set up the computers. And when the pandemic happened, I figured, I will be spending so much time at home. I'm just going to rewrite the Hello iPhone app. So I've been writing the iOS app, and it's like 95% complete. And I started writing it from scratch, and it's like beautiful, and we cannot wait to like launch it. And if you look at the Android app today, we launched our V3 version by looking at all the qualitative and quantitative feedback. And the app is just beautiful, and it works, and it brings people together. It's a happy app. And I'm super excited to also bring iOS Hello to all our users. And we prioritized Android because it's the platform that's more common all over the world. If you look at iOS, it has like a smaller like user base, and we wanted Hello to be as accessible as possible.
Yeah, just making a personal, let's say, advertisement. One of our open source products here at Zup, it's a framework for server-driven UI. So you can write on the backend, and you can deploy the same version to iOS, to Android, and to web in general. So I can show you later if you want to. But this is a way of getting rid of those specificities. And I'm impressed to see that you're writing the app yourself, because I don't know. Sometimes I said I was impressed because by the things I read, you were the product manager in Google. And when I read that you wrote the whole thing, and this was a curiosity that I would like to ask you. So you keep coding today?
Yeah, so the initial iOS app we launched was written Objective-C, and I wrote like half of the code. And right now, everything switched like Swift on iOS. And I had the option of implementing V3 using the existing code base with Objective-C, or I had the option to rewrite it in like Swift, and I decided to like rewrite it on Swift. And today, still like the best experiences are native. So if you write like an Android app using like the Android platforms and SDKs and IDEs, or if you use like the Xcode and like Swift to write like iPhone app, they become like the best possible solution. But I wouldn't be surprised if like in the near future we'll be able to use like technologies like Flutter, or like the technology you mentioned, where you write like one app and then it works on iOS and it works on like Android, it works on the web as well. And that technologies are getting very close, which is super exciting.
Yeah. And actually, when you use this with another of our projects, you can deploy to specific rings or circles of users. And you don't need to pass through the store, because when the user downloads the app for the first time, everything is native. But let's say the contract that he receives to build the screens or part of the screens are coming from the backend. So we don't need to wait for the app to be approved by the store, neither wait for the user to update, to test a new hypothesis or to change something and to experiment. This is why we created those projects, to allow people to experiment much more with hypothesis driver development. I can show you later, but
that's very interesting. Actually, there are some apps out there that use like technology, and users are not even aware of it. One of the things that companies like notice, whether it's like Apple or Google or anyone else, not everyone updates the apps. Not everyone has their own like automatic update, and oftentimes people don't have like the latest version of the phone that's able to support like the latest operating system that supports those apps. And one solution around it is actually download the framework, or like whatever data you send to the client that that enables it to render the latest version of the app. And it's kind of like interesting. Like some of the banking apps actually use that. When you start the app, it says updating to the latest version, but it's not actually like an official update using the Apple Store or Google Store. It's an update they do internally using their framework. And that's one of the things why I love technology, because I love to understand how things work. And like what you mentioned is like very well. It's like very important, because if you don't update the apps, then you get out of sync with like all the advances in the backend and the cloud and what the client is able to do. But if you're able to update the client without going through the app store, you can be in sync with like the server and the client.
Exactly. Those challenges are really, really amazing. And talking about the social behavior and the way people use social networks, there's a lot of discussion going on right now regarding fake news and some other issues that we are having on social networks. And there are countries trying to put some specific rules or legislation about it. I interviewed Windsurf 2 weeks ago, and we are talking about this idea of a single country trying to put laws or trying to manage one piece of the internet, and how this could break the whole thing. I believe that for social networks, it's almost the same. Let's say if a social network is not physically present in Brazil or juridically here, and I found the content abusive or offensive to me, I don't have a way of taking that content away, or bringing that user to justice or anything like that.
Yeah.
How do you think we can solve this worldwide speaking?
That's a really good question. Here's my opinion on this. Like ideally, if you had the perfect governments, we would have governments regulate social media. But there's so much corruption in governments and in politics, both on like the federal level and also in the state level. And like I don't want to name like countries, but there are so many countries who are like the president is like corrupt, the mayor is corrupt, the city officials are corrupt, and you can't count on them to make the right decisions, because they're going to prioritize their political influence and power to make sure that they get the benefit from it. And you can easily imagine like the president like using the power of like social media to make sure that they get elected like a second term. So I don't think like the regulation on the government is like a practical, viable solution as long as we have corrupt governments and politicians and officials. And I see that a lot actually with what's happening in the city I'm in like San Francisco. There's like so much like corruption here. Of course, I'm not gonna like name any officials, but it's just like sad because like oftentimes people forget what's important and they do what's like the opposite because they just become like self-motivated for like their self-gains and self-power, and they don't care about the community or others. And here you see the power of the consumer, right? Like the consumer can decide what social media apps to use. If a social media product has a history of abusing communities, if they have a history of prioritizing misinformation and also using content that's like polarizing people, then users have the freedom not to use that app and to look at alternatives out there. And that's the most important thing we have. You know, there's like so much talk about how some social networks don't have the user's benefit in heart, right? They optimize just for revenue, shareholders, marketers, advertisers, and they optimize it in the expense of like teenagers committing suicide because they don't care about the user. They just care about like product profits. And what we need to do is we have to create a community consciousness and have the movements in place that will not use those services. And as like parents, you know, it's like so important to teach our kids and the generations ahead of us about like what social media services to use and how to use them and how to be aware of like the harm they can get from using those services.
Yes, and I'm talking about fake news specifically. Something that I always believed because of my experience on Orkut.com and in social media a few years ago is that the community by itself would be able to select what they would like to see and what they don't like to see. So the contents with fake news and things like that will have a very low engagement and will never be, let's say, printed too much or exposed too much on user feeds. But after it was, people were able to invest a lot of money to, you know, finance fake news distribution. This really got totally weird. So, and I'm not talking only about Twitter and Facebook and social media, the traditional ones, but Telegram. We're having issues on WhatsApp. How do you think we could manage this, or we could try to find a way? Because we can't count on, you know, good behavior anymore. We can count on people consciousness because they're not doing this, but they just spread the, you know, the if you repeat a lie 1,000 times, it becomes a truth.
You're totally right. And it's like the algorithms and how we optimize algorithms. I'm not going to name like social networks, but back in the day, you would post something on social media and then your whole network would see it. And then they would comment on it, like talk about it. It was something that was nice because they gave you the power to exposure, right? But what's happening right now is when you post something on social media, you have to create like a paid content page and you have to pay for it for people to look at it. And as a result, you don't even see from your friends that truly matter. They don't show up in your feed because it doesn't increase like revenue or like profits. And I'll give you like one example. I have like one friend who's an archaeologist, and she has like the most wonderful posts about like Egyptian archaeology on social media. And she says, oh, like I used to get all these like likes and comments, but no one's like interacting with my content anymore. And I told her, like, they just want you to like pay for it. You get all this exposure for free, but now like you don't get it anymore. They want you to like pay for it. Another example is my friend had a heart attack, which is like so important to know, right? Like it's your friend, it's someone in your network, and she posted it on Facebook, and I didn't see that message in my feed. And out of like the 500 posts I had, that was the one that I truly cared about and wanted to know, but I didn't see it. And that shows like how like bad the feeds are curated. If you look at hello.com, we have this reputation system that we call karma. If you meet someone in real life, initially they're a stranger, then they become an acquaintance, then they become a friend, a close friend, and maybe your best friend. So there are levels of reputation you gain over time, and as you have more reputation, the more like trustworthy, respectable you are. And we have the same kind of infrastructure on Hello, where we mirror real life reputation. And on Hello, as you interact with other people and content and share content and interact with other content that people share, you gain a reputation, and then the reputation increases over time. And we also take into account what kind of like activities you do. For instance, if you talk a lot about food, you have a high reputation on food. And when you post content, your posts are going to be distributed widely depending on your reputation and depending on like what kind of like reputation you have in what personas. So as a result, we don't have any problems with misinformation, and we have no issues with distribution of wrong content, because if you're a user that doesn't have content that people vouch for or approve, that content is not going to be distributed, and it's going to be silenced right away. So we don't have the problems that social media has today, where anyone can create content, put tons of money in it, and have it widely distributed, even when it's misinformation.
Yeah.
And misinformation is like so important. If you look at like the global health crisis we have with vaccination, right? There are all these groups and communities online that are like anti-vaccination movements that say you should not get vaccinated. I mean, look at like millions of people dying out there because they're not vaccinated. It's like scientific, it's like data driven, and you need to get like vaccinated. And if everyone got like vaccinated, we wouldn't have all these like issues we have with all the quarantines, all the closures, like being able to travel. And a big part of like what's happening with the global health crisis is actually like social media and these like anti-vaccinators. And that's a big problem, and it's causing people to die because they don't get vaccinated, because they're reading some bogus article online that tells vaccination is bad. And that's how serious misinformation is, because it's actually not only affecting elections, it's actually literally killing people.
And helping also the disease to spread and also to create new variants that we are having right now. The other thing about the behavior on social network, typically social network inserts you inside bubbles, let's call this way. So it's really interesting to see that my bubbles, for instance, on Twitter are mostly from developers and more senior developers and people that really like to laugh and have fun. So this bubble that I included, it's probably a very small part of the whole universe, because I see people leaving Twitter right now because they say it's too much toxic. But when I see my feeds, I said, come on, what is happening? And the same thing on Facebook. So how do you avoid or how do you work with those bubbles inside hello.com?
So with Hello, we have around like 100 passion interest categories that we call personas. And you can like pick the personas you're passionate about. For instance, you can say you're very passionate about like technology and science, or like journalism, right? And then you can also say I'm not interested in like politics, and you can automatically mute like all content that's like politics related. And we all have like different like facets in our lives, right? Like maybe like every day you go to the gym, you're a gym bunny, you're a fitness buff, and then you come home and you make popcorn and watch like Netflix, and then you go to work and you're like an artist and work with like artists. So there are all these different communities we belong to, and sometimes the communities like don't intersect, and that's like totally fine. uh, with Hello, by having a focused emphasis on communities and personas, we are able to make sure that we can address like all the different interests and passions you have. And they're going to like change over time. When you are in high school or college, the things you're interested in are going to be like very different when you grow up. The things that you are interested in completely change when you become like a dog owner or a parent or have a kid. Like they completely change if you get a job in a different like profession, and they also change when you move to like a different city or country. And with Hello, by using communities and also personas, you're able to like nurture those interest buckets.
Yeah, I really want that iPhone app because I want to, it took me a lot of time to filter my social networks and to create this, let's say, safe environment that I have today. But I have friends that they just gave up. They said, "No, this is too much toxic for me. I don't like it. I'm just moving out." And what is your biggest challenge with hello.com today?
I would say our biggest challenge is there's a very unhealthy addiction to current social media. And a lot of users have this unhealthy addiction to using an app, and it's like very hard for them to try something different, something new, even if it's like a better way to do things and to experience online social media. And sometimes we have users who say, oh, like my friends are not on it, or there are not enough people on it. And it's like a chicken and egg problem, right? Like right now, uh, there's like so much unhealthy addiction and engagement on current social media that like most people are not even willing to go out of their bubble to try something new. But with Hello, what we noticed was when people use the service consistently for a couple of weeks, at the end they tell us, "Oh, like I like this much better. I'm actually like happy every time I open the app, and I'm actually meeting people around my interests and passions, and I love the community and I love the experience, and I like this so much better than what's out there." But in order to get there, you have to make that investment to try something new. And unfortunately, as humans, we have predictable behavior and we have our routines, and it's like very hard to like get out of our routines. As an example, uh, let's talk about like running every day, right, or going to the gym. It's like really hard to get into that habit to go running every morning or go hit the gym every evening, right? But what scientists found out that if you do it regularly, right, if you do it like for a week or a month, if you go to the gym every day, it becomes a part of your habit, of your routine, and then you get like all the health benefits from it, and then you realize, oh, that's like a better like lifestyle for me. And I think like that's what needs to happen with social media. We need to be more conscious about what apps should we use that actually create a better lifestyle, a better mental health, and what apps actually help me genuinely authentically connect with other people. And like life is not about like how many likes or followers you get. It's about the experience to share with people. one-to-one or in a community. And it's like the most wonderful thing when you take those experiences you have online and then you mirror it and it transcends to offline interactions. And if you look at Orkut.com and now on Hello, there are so many relationships that started online and then transitioned to like offline, where people became like best friends, they moved in together, they started families. And that's like the magic of social media. And it just saddens me that social media today is missing all that magic, and they're only getting like the misinformation and hate and abuse and angriness and polarization and anxiety and depression and like mental health issues. They're not getting like the best part of like social media.
Yeah. So next year we're gonna have elections in Brazil, presidential elections here. I'm really curious to see. Probably the social networks here will become a mess again, and also we probably gonna have the pandemics fading away. I hope so next year. How do you? What are the challenges that you foresee for social network in general when we come back to the old world?
The challenges for existing or for new social networks?
Both.
I think like for existing social networks, the main challenge is dealing with like abuse, hate, harassment, and that's like a problem that's very hard to solve, because you have to change the mentality. You have to optimize your algorithms and your infrastructure and technology and the design of your product to make users first, to care about happiness and creating authentic connections. And I'm very doubtful that that's going to happen, because at the end, you have people sitting in a boardroom talking about, like what products should they launch, what features should they have. And when they think about like those decisions, they have to weigh, I can make teenagers 10% like happier, or I can increase my profits like 20%. And they're always going to pick like increasing the profits like 20%. So I don't really know how like current social media is going to fix their problems, because they're not going to change the mentality, because they're not going to care about like shareholders and third parties and marketers and advertisers more. So that's a challenge with current social media. If you look at like new apps, new products, I think the challenge is to convince the consumers out there that there are better alternatives, there are healthier alternatives, and that social media can be like a happy place, and it can provide genuine, authentic connections and relationships, and it doesn't have to be all bad. And I think that's like the main challenge we have. And more than ever, we need like better alternatives for social, like Hello.
Yeah, great. And the last one, we are almost on time here. There's a lot of people talking about metaverse and this idea of putting people inside virtual environments with augmented reality, virtual reality. And I was making fun with friends over the weekend, because I said, hey, the guys are just trying to put Second Life alive again. And now it's on VR. So I know that we are all probably closed at our own homes and missing the social context. Yeah. And I believe that people are overestimating the power of these new technologies, of this new immersive space. What do you think about it?
It's funny, they used to say augmented reality is going to be like the next big thing, right? They said like 3D televisions with those glasses is going to be the next big thing. And none of these things actually materialized. And you have Second Life, right? Which is like the thing like closest to meta that we experience and we know about. And Second Life doesn't have all like big community that they used to have today. And if you look at science, like I'm a scientist, right? I'm a data scientist, computer scientist, social scientist, and I like to base my facts not only qualitatively but also quantitatively. And if you look at science, there's a direct correlation with people spending more time online on social networks and less time face-to-face with people, right? And as humans, it's in our DNA to interact with other people face-to-face. And one of the hardest things for me during pandemic is the loss of like touch. I miss hugging my friends, you know, kissing them on the cheek, and that's been missing, and that's been like really hard for me. Now, we know the science behind social media, right? Like right now, the current social media that people use is making people less social and more isolated. Now, imagine if we even amplify it even further with like Meta and like the insane amount of like harm and damage it can do to society. I believe that like Meta, if it's done with the right intentions, can be a tremendous like benefit, right? Like a good example I have is one of my best friends. He lives in Estonia. He used to like live in New York, and he met his girlfriend on Orkut.com who lived in Estonia. And they met on Orkut.com, and eventually like they fell in love, and then the girlfriend moved to New York, and then they got married and had 2 kids. And you know, it starts with like messaging, and then you have a phone call, and you have a video chat. And imagine if you could have a VR experience, right, with like a 3D face-to-face conversation. And that's incredible. That's amazing. And that would really bring people closer together, but with the right purpose. You know, like the purpose of social media should be to bring people closer together. But when you have companies that don't have that as their focus or intention, I'm really worried that things like Meta will bring us further apart and split us and not bring us closer together.
Yeah, you just described a scene that appears on my mind. I used to have buddy pokes on Orkut with my wife. At that time, she was my girlfriend. I had my buddy poke. She had her buddy poke. And sometimes they talk together online. It was more or less what you said, without VR and anything like that. But one thing that people is really writing all the time here on the comments is, please come back Orkut.com. We miss Orkut.com so much. So everyone in Brazil really would love. So guys, go there and try hello.com. So Orkut basically learned a lot with Orkut.com and previous social networks. And he's trying to build, as you saw here, a network where we can be more positive, where we can, you know, work around happiness instead of this toxic environment that you used to have on all other networks. Orkut, thank you so much for this conversation. For me, we just grab a beer here and keep talking over the next 3 or 4 hours, because there's a lot of other things we would love to talk about. And thank you so much for being here. You're so kind. And again, thank you for everything you did to putting Brazilians on the internet, because Brazilian growth on internet happened in 2 moments: when you launched Orkut.com and with the pandemics. So those were the 2 things that moved people all over internet, and they, you know, realize how it's good to, as you said, we are not close to people because you can't, but the networks are keeping us in touch somehow. Thank you so much.
The pleasure is all mine. And I think like with the pandemic, one of the benefits of the pandemic is that we are able to realize how important our connections are, or like relationships with our friends, our like relationships with our family. And like more than ever, we are aware of like community. And I'm really hoping that the pandemic will bring a new point of view to people to realize how important our like relationships and communities are, and how important we are to each other. Thanks so much for having me, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Obrigado.
Yeah, me too. I really hope to have you physically in Brazil so we can have a beer and talk much more.
We should have a caipirinha.
Oh, I can make a caipirinha for you. I make a good one.
Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.